Good morning, YouTube friends and family. I hope y'all are well today. I'm going to be covering a subject that I wish someone would have told me or had a conversation with me back when I was 15. This is a story of how I became married for the first time. When I was 15 years old, I had just left school for reasons that are for another video. But I was at home with my parents, and one day my mom came to me and she explained that there was a gentleman that we had known for quite some time, and he was prominent in our church, and he was going to be taking some friends out for dinner for their anniversary, and my mom wanted me to accompany him so that he wouldn't feel as though he was a third wheel, that it would be two couples instead of just the one couple and himself. Now, this should have been a red flag in view of the fact that he did not approach me. It was my mom who approached me. And she really encouraged me to go on this dinner date, and she wasn't going to accept no for an answer. So at 15, it was later in the year, I would say October, November. So perhaps I had just turned 16. But I went on this dinner date, and I was enthralled with the adult conversation. I felt privileged to have been chosen to go on this date, and that's how it all started. So from there it progressed. He and I became very close friends and became romantically involved in a supervised way. We were never left alone to our own devices. If I was with him, I was also with other adults. But as the year progressed, it became time for me to get my driver's license permit. And as I remember, he would get off from work and he would drive to my house, which was about 25 miles distance. He would pick me up. He would take me to driver's education, and then he would return me home, at which point we were allowed to visit in the living room in a supervised manner. Well, I was living in New Hampshire at the time. How do I want to express this? The marriage laws in New Hampshire were you had to be 21 years old in order to get legally married. So we were dating in a very supervised way through that year of my being 15. I got my driver's permit and I was so excited. So I was allowed to drive his car when he was at work, and we were inseparable. My mom was happy. She thought she was doing a good thing, and this video is not to attack anybody. It's just to share my story and share the lessons that were learned in order to help you advise younger ones, or in order for younger ones to listen to this video and see if they can gain some insight if they're in a position that they're wanting to become married young. So there was a conversation in which my mom and dad were in a hallway. They thought they were out of earshot, but my mom was telling him under no circumstances should he voice his opinion. Apparently, he did not agree with the situation, but that seemed how the conversation went. Well, shortly after that, I found myself out in the front yard having a picnic with my then boyfriend, who was 12 and a half years older than myself. And he asked me to marry him. And of course I was enthralled. I had rose-colored glasses on. I felt that he was just the answer to all of my troubles at home. And so of course I said yes. And from there was another conversation with my parents where my dad stated that I had to be at least 17. So in my mind, I turned 17 on a Wednesday. So we set the wedding date for Saturday following. It was a beautiful wedding. The entire church organization was involved. We had probably over 100 people at the wedding. We had a very lovely reception, and everybody wished us well and sent us off for our honeymoon. Okay, so here I am at 17. I had not finished school. I had completed the 9th grade, and I had no life experience. Now, how did I get married at 17 when the legal law of New Hampshire was 21? Apparently, my mom did some research, and she made an appointment to go in front of a judge, which she attended, and I attended. My father was not there for whatever reason, I don't know. But the judge, asked me several questions. One of which I remember was I pregnant? Was I carrying a child? Did I have to get married? And of course the answer was no. In my little mind, I was happily dating this man, and I just wanted to marry him because he was my soulmate. And the judge granted that order, and that's how we were able to legally get married. Now, later on, I found out that he had to become my legal guardian until I turned 21. So in reality, I've got a hair hanging wild here. So in reality, what took place was my parents had to give up guardianship and turn that over to the man who became my husband. So from the time I was 17 until I was 21, he was my legal guardian, and he was the one that was able to make all the decisions for my future up until I turned 21. Well, I was just in this lovely little bubble of I'm so grown, I'm such an adult, I have a husband, let's build our lives together and have a happy future. What I didn't take into consideration, and this is what I want all of you who are considering getting married at a young age, was that I did not have the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom of what to look for in a spouse. I was just all caught up in the romance of everything. So I'm not talking in a bad way about my children's father. I'm just sharing some facts with you. At the time that we were dating, when this all began, he was living in a very, very tiny travel trailer. He was having a hard time gaining employment, steady employment. And he did not have my best interests at heart. Obviously, with a man who is 12 to 13 years older, or 12 and a half years older than I was, he also should have had the wisdom to know that this was too young to be getting married. At this point in time, I feel he was manipulated by my mom. He was encouraged by my mom, and I'm not sure what her motives were. I'm going to accept that her motives were trying to do something that was good for me in regards to church beliefs, that if I married this man because he was a prominent member of the church, that somehow would help me to gain salvation. I'm just going to put it that way. So, in the years that followed, as I grew, I had 2 children. At 19, I had my daughter, and at 4.5 years later, I gave birth to my son. In both of those situations, my husband was distant. I did not have easy deliveries. They ended up being emergency situations in each of their cases. And I don't think that my husband was supportive in either of those situations. Now, thankfully, his parents stepped in with the birth of my daughter. We almost lost both of us. She was a 10-pound baby that refused to be born naturally and had to have an emergency C-section. And I lost a lot of, let's just say I had medical complications, and that left me in a very weakened state, and his parents stepped up to the plate and had me go to their house until I was recovered. Okay, also, in those few years before I gave birth, I noticed that he had a hard time gaining employment and staying employed, which brought us to move, just he and I and my daughter, to South Carolina. My son was not born yet. Once again, I found that we were living in poverty. We had managed to buy a single-wide mobile home, and we had a car, one car. He did not want me to work. I was to stay home and take care of the house. And, I don't recall him ever being overly affectionate. I don't recall him ever being supportive. Pretty much what happened was the church was his life, and I was to follow along behind him. I don't remember him walking really beside me, literally walking beside me. I remember always following along behind him and being the supportive wife of a prominent member of a church. Well, I lived this life a very unfulfilled life for 17 years. And when I became old enough to realize that I also needed to go to work in order to support my children and provide a life for them, this was not approved by him at all. He fought me tooth and nail. He wanted me home. So I would work long enough to get us out of the hole, clear up the credit cards, wait for him to get another job. And once he got another job and had a steady income, I would then return back to being a housewife and taking care of the house and the kids. And just a few months later, this was a repetitive cycle. Just a few months later, he would lose his job. He would start using credit cards. The credit cards were maxed out. I would go to work. And because I did not have a very good education, it was always a quick fix. It was never a career. I would take a menial job that gave me enough income to keep a roof over our heads and put food on the table. So with this being explained, I know that my children love their dad. I'm not trying to talk bad about him. I'm just trying to explain the facts from my point of view. And did I get married too young? I got married way too young. Way too young. I was not able to have the mental capacity to see around corners and to see the red flags. In fact, I've often spoken to my daughter about it, and I said that I grew up as she grew up. I saw how she was handling life, what made sense to her, and she was pretty much, excuse me. She was pretty much teaching me how to become a responsible adult. So I'm not trying to trash their dad. I'm just trying to share some life experience in order to show that if the law in your state says you're not legally able to become married until you're 21, please don't. The medical community has acknowledged for many, many years that a girl does grow up a little bit faster. She matures a little bit faster than boys do, but that a boy's brain does not even fully develop until they're 25. So if I had to recommend, if I had a child sitting here wanting to get married early, here are the steps that I would suggest. Number one, please finish high school. Education is everything. At least finish high school. If you don't want to go to a 4-year college, go into a trade school and learn something that you can do with your hands. Learn something that will benefit the community. Learn something that you can serve the community with. You may want to become a hairdresser. You may want to, if you're a boy, you may want to learn carpentry or HVAC. But please do that. And if you can attend a 4-year college, I strongly recommend that you do that. Not so much for the education even, but for the experience that you will gain in life. Allow your brain to fully develop. Get some world experience, some social experience. Figure out the types of personalities you'd like to be around. Figure out the types of people you don't like to be around. Learn about why you want to get married. What is the core reason why you want to get married? Because in order for you to have a relationship, that does not require that you be married. You can have a boyfriend, you can have a close friend, you can have a girlfriend, but be loving enough. This is what I want to say. Be loving enough to allow yourself and your partner that you're interested in to grow emotionally and see if you really are fit for one another. Because what I found after 17 years, I had grown completely apart from my husband. He and I had nothing in common. The way we were raising our children, we were at odds with that. The work that I wanted to do, how I wanted to, explore my own self and my own self-interests, he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in me being the perfect maid to clean up after him, to take care of all the bills. I was the one that had to be responsible because he didn't want to be. The only thing he was interested in was serving in the position that he was in the church. That was his main focus. His main focus was not family. My main focus was family. I had 2 children I had to raise. And because of that, I ended up filing for divorce, realizing that he had matured to the person he was going to be. He wasn't interested in changing. He just wasn't at all supportive. Let me say that. He was, his interests were the only interests that he cared about. And if you allow time to go by when you meet somebody and you're interacting with them on a daily basis, they eventually show you the person that they are. And that may be exactly who you're looking for. And then again, it may not be. It may be the total opposite of who they presented themselves to be at the beginning. So this is my rant and rave, I guess, or this is my story. And I would strongly suggest for anybody who is interested in getting married, allow 2 or 3 years to go by. Be engaged if you want to be, but allow time to go by to see if you truly are soulmates, or if you're just looking through rose-colored glasses, or maybe there are reasons why you want to marry this person aren't healthy reasons. So I thank you for listening to me. This is husband number 1. I'm a slow learner, and we'll explore that in another video. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. I am 68 years old now. I have a clearer vision of what life is supposed to be like, and I would like to share these stories with you on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, and share, and help my channel to grow. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.